Welcome to Said in Stone, an Ozinga podcast, where we converge with industry leaders, our expert coworkers, and others on what we've made, what we can build on, and what we'll leave behind. Make sure to subscribe to the program on your preferred podcast app, as well as on YouTube for full video of every conversation. Today's guest is weekday morning anchor Cisco Cotto from WBBM Newsradio. Prior to joining Chicago's #1 talk radio station in 2014, he made his name on air with other legendary stations in the city, like WLS and WMAQ, receiving awards from the Associated Press and other news organizations. A graduate of Moody Bible Institute, Cisco eventually returned there to teach the young pastors of tomorrow as a professor of pastoral studies. As you'll hear today, he's also played an important role in launching or leading a number of churches across the Chicago suburbs. Let's listen in on today's chat, led by Ozinga CEO Marty Ozinga.
Good to have you here. Like when you walk in the room today, it's like, I know this voice. You know, it's like you have a famous Chicago voice, and so many people recognize your voice. I grew up on AM radio. My dad would drive us all around town looking for concrete sites, and AM, it drive us crazy. But, I think when I was a kid, it was like, you give us 22 minutes, we'll give you the world.
Yeah, kids usually grow into it. It's usually, my dad made me do this. And then they go, hey, there's actually good information there.
Yeah, all those traffic, like the Ike and all the different, I'm like, Dad, do you know, this is a different language. Do you know what they're saying? He's like, oh yeah, I know what they're saying. I'm like, okay. So, but it's great to have you here.
Thanks.
And, I would love to hear the story behind the voice, if you don't mind, and just learn more about you almost from the beginning. Your name is a curious name, like where were you born, all that kind of stuff. I'd just be curious right from the beginning, just to hear more about your story.
Yeah, most people say, Cisco Cotto, that's got to be a fake name, right?
Is this a stage name?
Yeah, no, it's not. It's like God knew from the beginning I was going to be on the radio or something. My grandfather in Puerto Rico was named Francisco.
Okay.
And then my parents named me Francisco after him. He died long before I was born, never met him, and yet I've been able to carry on this name and be Cisco throughout my life, which has worked really well on the radio.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I hated it.
Okay.
And I wanted to be John. I want to be a nice, normal name.
Isn't that fascinating how we hate things and then it becomes sort of a secret weapon in a way?
Kids want to be just sort of going along with the group. They don't want to be different at all. And that was me. And now years later, I say, oh, I'm so glad I have this name, compared to John. No offense to any Johns at all in the audience. I grew up in West Aurora, wanted to be a lawyer, didn't realize until later I was a terrible student and never would have been a lawyer.
You got to be a good student if you want to be a lawyer.
Yes, I never would have gotten into law school at all. And I was a student at Aurora Christian High School when a broadcaster for the Kane County Cougars came to speak at our school. I went up and talked to him after. It was a chapel session, and I went in and talked to him afterward just because I said, he does what Harry Carey does.
Oh, yeah.
I want to talk to this guy. And it was the weirdest thing. He looked up at me as soon as I said hello, and he said, you have an amazing voice.
That's fascinating. And what age was that at?
I was probably 14, 15. Mm-hmm. And I thought I was Screech or Peter Brady or something.
Yeah,
I didn't
but even then.
anything. He knew it. That's what he said. He goes, you have a great voice. And I thought, oh, okay. And so he took me out to the ballpark and let me watch him do his broadcast, got me an internship at Moody Radio as a high school student. And from that moment on, I said, oh, radio is it. This is what I want to do. Forget anything else. I just want to be on the radio. And went to Western Illinois University, studied radio and political science, and then got a job in Chicago out of an internship right after that. And I've been really blessed to be able to stay in Chicago the whole time. I didn't have to bounce around like so many broadcasters do.
You were at 670 to start, and I remember 670 was news radio way back then, and it changed, right, to sports radio at some point?
Yeah, it's now the Score.
Yeah, the Score, 670 the Score.
Yeah, I was there, and about a year later, they flipped the format, so I think I'm bad luck.
670 was
670 was all news.
Right?
Yeah, you had 670 WMAQ.
Yeah.
And that was its own station for years. And then you had 780 WBBM, and both of them were doing news. Both of them were having success, but then they were they were bought. 670 was bought.
Okay.
And so now, one company
Yeah.
had 2 stations, and they said, what are we doing here? And so they made 670 the score, and the rest is kind of history, as they've had such great success there.
So what was your path sort of like through the industry then? You get this job at 670, and like what would you do there?
Yeah, I was a reporter, anchor.
Okay.
I was the young guy, so it was pretty much you do whatever, and I'm just happy to be here. And I would work on the weekends and the late nights and all over the place. But after about, it was about a year and a half, it was pretty obvious, okay, they're going to put the score on 670. Mm-hmm. We're all going to be fired. I need to find something. What am I going to do? And there happened to be an opening at WLS, which is 890 a.m. And so I went there as a news reporter and anchor and just had a blast, not only doing news, but seeing some of these hosts that became legendary in Chicago. Don Wade and Roma, Ro Khan and Gary Meyer. I was there with Jay Marvin. I mean, just these people that I had listened to since I was in college and earlier than that. And now here I am on the other side of the glass from them, working with them, on the air with them, and I just couldn't believe it.
And what was your role at that point with those folks?
I was a news reporter and anchor as well,
Okay.
and you'd be sort of a sidekick on their show
Okay.
where they'd bring you in. And one day there was something going on with a soccer tournament. They made me shave my head like Ronaldo, and it was right before my honeymoon. I burned my head on my honeymoon and said, I don't think I should. I should have done that stunt. I really shouldn't have.
Like hazing the young guy.
That's exactly how it felt. Hey, you're the new guy. Come here.
Yeah,
do
we got
this little
something
thing.
fun.
So it was just great to be able to, yes, do news there, to cover some significant events there, but also to be able to have that fun interaction with some people that I'd listened to for a long time.
So at this point in your career, you're feeling you're in the right industry that the gentleman sort of spoke to you about way back when. Was there any doubt of that? I mean, even through this young age, that this was
it was
for
just
you?
a love.
Yeah.
I mean, it just the being on the microphone, being able to be a personality, being able to know that not to be over the top, but to know that you're providing this service that people want and need in order to get through their day, to know what's going on, to get where they're going, to understand what's happening in the world. It's just so much fun. And there was really never a point where I lost my love for it. I still haven't after all these years. I started in radio, I think I was 19 in college when I got my first radio job, and never imagined I'd still be doing it. And there are days I don't want to get out of bed just because I'm tired.
Yeah,
but
that's not hard to believe when you're telling me what your schedule is.
Right.
I mean, tell me your day.
Yeah, I wake up at 2:45 in the morning. That's when the alarm clock goes off.
And you still love this.
I still love it.
Yeah.
I want to stay in bed sleeping. There's plenty of times I want to do that.
2:45, the alarm goes off.
Alarm goes off at 2:45. Actually, it's my watch that goes off at 2:45.
Same. Yeah.
I would like to stay married.
Yeah, that's really been a good. Just the buzzing of the watch is enough, or is it? Yeah,
it is. The buzzing's enough, and I don't want my alarm clock ready to go off or my phone or something, and wake my wife up. And so it goes off. I get ready. I'm usually out the door by about 3:30 or so. And then I get to the radio station after 4, and I'm there. I have to write some news before we go on the air and get a few things ready. Certainly start brewing the coffee as soon as I get there.
I would imagine.
And then I'm ready to be on the air at 5 o'clock. And I'm on for 5 hours from 5 until 10 every weekday.
Okay. Wow. And given that it's live, and every day's got its own events of the day and whatnot. I mean, is it fairly predictable, or is it just kind of constant curveballs with different news and everything else?
Yeah, the format is predictable.
Got it.
We know what we're going to do: news, traffic, weather, sports, business, all of that. But you never know on any given morning. Is something big going to happen overnight that's going to develop throughout the morning? Is there going to be some kind of a major traffic incident that's going to become the big story of the day? You never really know. And I'm in a position where I can write the first half hour of news because I'm there early and getting those things done. After that, we have a whole team of people behind the scenes, writers, editors, assistant producers, reporters out in the field. They're all doing what it seems like is the really hard work of gathering everything, putting it together, and getting it ready. So my job, along with my co-host, Mike Martinez, our job is to take all this information that they've fed into computer systems. We have a bunch of screens in our studio, and our job is simply to make it sound natural and conversational. But there's times I feel bad because it's a lot of folks behind the scenes that are doing a lot of the work. They really are.
Well, I have to say, you do make it sound very natural and conversational. It's an amazing thing to see, because I've been to the studio and I've seen how you've done it. It is quite an orchestra of people behind the scenes, and yet they make it just seem simple and natural. And
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, that's the idea. You got to make it seem like everything's all seamless.
Yeah,
even
appearances can be deceiving.
That's right. And because it's radio, it's good, because there are times I'm in the studio and maybe I don't have something I need, and I'm waving at someone behind the scenes and pointing at things, and while I'm talking, and so the key is to make it sound like everything is
all calm.
Now it's time for traffic and weather together on the 8th. I'm doing this and just make it sound okay.
Yeah. I am curious about the sound itself. I would agree that your voice, not only your name is unique, but your voice it sounds like, and maybe it's because I'm used to your voice on the radio, but tell me about that. Like, is that a trained thing at this point, like that or is it just, no, I just kind of talk the way I would always talk?
Yeah, I've never been any sort of professional voice coaching or anything like that. I think there's, over the years, I hate listening to myself.
Interesting.
You just always sound different than you do in your head. And yet, I've listened to myself. I've had people I respect listen to me and give feedback on what's going on with your voice. Are there weird breaths? Are you a little too high pitched? I had one really good friend once. I always ask for feedback. And she said, you have this happy sound in your voice, this sort of smile in your voice when you're talking about bad news.
Okay.
And so maybe you need to tweak that a little bit so you can sound like you have that smile when it's a good story, but when it's a story of some sort of violence or tragedy or something, maybe you shouldn't say, 12 people shot this morning.
Okay, yeah.
Dial that back a little bit.
And was that helpful?
Oh, it's hugely helpful.
Yeah.
And I still keep that in mind now. So I still ask for feedback too. So even though I've been doing this a while, I don't think, man, I've arrived. I don't need that sort of
It does
feedback.
bring up a good point, though. Like when you're covering so much news, and some of it can be extremely tragic. Is there any place for empathy, or is it just, hey, this is all business? What is that
it's
like?
tough because it's not a talk show where we can necessarily be emotive. And yet you don't want to act completely disconnected, like you're just reading a sign or something. And so the voice, we are able to, I think, reflect the weight of the stories that we are doing. We do have the opportunity, if something's more lighthearted, we can play around with it a little bit and chime in and kind of tease each other a little bit, the whole team. But when it comes to what you could do in other radio formats where you can really get into it. Our job is, hey, here's the story. We're not going to act like it's not a big deal or like it's not impacting people, but we're just, our job is to let you know what's going on.
Yeah.
And then allow you to think about it, connect some of the dots and feel that emotion on your own.
And I think people do appreciate that there's still that medium that exists, whether it's for political reasons or elsewhere. There's sort of just facts, and because we have so much sort of talking heads about all the opinions around things. There still seems to be a place in your world where it's like, here's the news.
Yeah, many people, they like having their opinions affirmed, which is why some of those other medium have really grown, those other shows. And yet there is, I think, an exhaustion at times. Especially if it's a political angle or something, whether you're left or right, or there's this sense of, I just want to know what's going on so that I can be informed of what's going on in the world. And so it's not that we don't like having our views affirmed, but there are times when we go, okay, well, let's dial it back a little bit and just find out what's going on. If there's a bill floating through Congress or floating through Springfield, what does it say? What does it mean? What are the implications of it? Instead of just, well, this is good, this is bad, or this is harmful, or this is helpful. What's going on with it? What are the details? When it comes to the Supreme Court, let's talk about what's the issue they're actually deciding today instead of some of the hyperbole. Yeah, there's a place for that, absolutely. But let's just find out what's going on, and that's what we try to do.
Yeah, that's great. I'm curious to get your take just over the arc of your career, how the industry has changed or is changing, and sort of like how you see it even now, like with all these kind of mediums and everything else. is it alive and well? Is it on its deathbed? AM radio, like let's just say, or where are we at in the world
It's really interesting, Marty, because radio has more than anything a perception problem, where it's not that radio is dying. There's been some contraction, certainly, as there's podcasts and video and streaming services. And there's all these areas of competition, absolutely. And so there's been some contraction, but there's still a really big audience. A lot of people, especially in the morning, but really throughout the day, a lot of people are reliant on radio, whether it's for information or entertainment or whatever it is that they're looking for. But the perception is radio's dying. No one listens to radio anymore. It's a thing of the past. It's my grandfather's way of getting information. And so what that does from a business standpoint is it creates revenue pressure because you have many people who are unwilling to spend, to advertise in radio because of the perception that radio is dead. And no matter how many times we go, there's 1 million people listening, just to our station. There's lots of other stations as well. It's a perception problem.
Interesting.
So it's really the industry as a whole needs to figure out how we've been marketing other people for decades.
Yeah.
We really have to figure out how to market ourselves so that businesses looking to get their message out understand, yes, there are many ways to get your message out. You need to diversify that. You need billboards. You need digital. You need TV. You need these things.
Yeah.
You need to be diverse. And yet radio is still a really good way to reach people because there's a lot of people listening to the radio.
Yeah. And how about even the pipeline, young people thinking about it, again, getting to this perception issue. I mean, is the industry struggling with that, or is there still plenty of people, whether it's radio programs in schools or whatever, is that just as strong as it's been, or is that a perception issue affecting that as well?
Yeah, not as strong as it's been, certainly, but there are still plenty of radio and TV programs, college radio stations. What has had to happen, which is good, is those programs have diversified. So podcasting, whether it's just video or audio, is now a part of those programs.
Makes sense. Because
of the understanding, even if you're on the radio, podcasting is going to be some part of that job. It's not going to be just a radio job anymore. So they really are partners. There's an immediacy, especially in news radio. There's an immediacy of being able to turn on the radio and know at any given moment you're getting the most up-to-date news of what's going on in the world.
It's hard to get that in a podcast. It's just not, it doesn't exist. Now, there's some people who post every day, but even that feels a little bit,
stale. You post in the morning, but by 4 in the afternoon, there might be something else going on. Yeah. The place of podcasting is longer form, in-depth, specialty. And there is a significant place for that. And that's why I say I don't think that it's one necessarily over the other. They really are two aspects of the same desire on the part of the public, but they're just fulfilling that desire in different ways.
Yeah. It's a very dynamic time. And then now with AI and just the different things that are available to do it. And we're kind of having fun just learning about it because, we never had an AM radio signal. Those were not, how do you broadcast to people? Right. Only a select few people could do that, whether it was on TV or radio.
But that's one of the challenges too.
Right.
Is I see what you're doing here, and you guys are working hard to make this a really quality podcast, and I see the results of that. But because it takes a microphone and a laptop, or I don't know, maybe just a phone, in order for people to put a podcast together, anyone can upload to iTunes. People begin feeling as though anybody can do this.
Yeah.
And so what you have is a quality problem.
Right.
When it was just radio and TV, there was some sort of a filter that said you have to be good, you have to know what you're talking about, you have to be able to hold an audience, all those sorts of things. Now, anyone can just go, I'm going to start a podcast.
Is anybody going to listen?
I'm going to be Joe Rogan. I mean, it's all I have to do is get this podcast. I'm such an interesting person. That's right. And
here we are.
The example I use is I always say, think of yourself sitting at a bar or restaurant, and the guy next to you is having a conversation with someone. to that guy, that conversation is super interesting. But to you, you're just annoyed that he's talking so loud because you don't care about what he has to say and all that. And so there really is a skill to being interesting that the easy availability, anyone can break into it, it creates an oversaturation, I think. Maybe some of that will be weeded out, though. I don't know.
I think, at the end of the day, it's kind of like leadership. If no one's following, are you a leader? I think there's the same aspect. If you're not resonating with folks, and there's not a followership, you're going to, like you said, there's a weeding out at some point.
Yeah, it goes away.
Yeah.
And it's simple. You just have to acknowledge. And many of the people who are super, super excited, hey, I'm going to break into this, all of a sudden they go, it was more of a hobby. I'm not really doing anything with that. But if it's quality, if you're providing something interesting, there is an audience. People want to consume these things, but it just has to be something that they want.
Yeah. So we talked about your professional path and journey into radio, and yet you went back to school for theology, or tell me more about that.
Marty, it's fascinating because I graduated from Western Illinois University, radio and political science. I mentioned that earlier. And I said, I'm never going to have to go to another class again.
Yeah.
I'm so excited. I hated school.
Yeah.
I just hated school. And so I did this sort of happy dance on graduation day. I'm done. But then about maybe a year and a half, maybe 2 years later, I started feeling this internal tugging. I think I want to go back to school. I think I want to study something.
It only took that long.
That's it.
Wow.
It was so weird. I don't know if I was really bored or something. I don't know what it was. And so I started looking online, and then one day I popped onto the website for Moody Bible Institute. And it's like this light bulb went off where I said, hey, I've been a Christian since I was a young kid. Maybe I should study the Bible some more. I mean, that's a good thing to study.
Sure.
And so I enrolled at Moody Bible Institute in their seminary. And the very first day, very first class, I sat down next to the woman that I would marry.
Wow.
Right? It's like those stories that you hear about. And we both ended up working our way through Moody, graduated, and at the end of that journey, I had a Master of Divinity degree. I thought, man, this is great.
What did your fellow radio people think?
They thought I was nuts. They just had
what are you doing?
They thought, what do you went to school for radio? You're in radio. What are you doing with that? Why are you in seminary? What is it? It really was.
Where were you living at the time?
It was those weird looks. So at first, Marty, I wish you hadn't brought this up. At first, I was literally living in my parents' basement.
Okay.
At first.
That's not embarrassing anymore, by the way. A lot of kids do this now.
When I was there, it was embarrassing.
Yeah,
now
not anymore. Now it's normal.
It's just the norm. So I was living in my parents' basement, and then I had an opportunity to move into an apartment on the north side of Chicago in Albany Park with a Moody classmate.
Okay.
And so I moved into that apartment. Didn't know until later that my wife, who was then my girlfriend, said, once I knew you had an opportunity to move into an apartment, if you had chosen to stay in your parents' basement, I would have broken up with you.
Yeah.
I'd have said, this is some loser or something.
Interesting. The stigma of living at home was much more important.
She wanted to know that this is a guy who can handle things on his own, right? I didn't know all the weight of that decision. But I moved into that apartment, and then Anna and I got married back in 2004.
Where is she from?
She's from the western suburbs, too. Both of us West Suburbanites, but we didn't know each other until we went to Moody. And so we both studied at Moody and loved it, and I got done and thought, man, I know the Bible better. This is perfect. I got a wife. I got more about the Bible. This is extraordinary.
Yeah, now what?
Now I thought, Marty, now nothing. Now I'm done. I'm going to keep going in radio, and everything's going to be fine.
But it was rewarding to go to school and learn.
Yeah, great professors. They really cared about us, and not only wanted to teach us, but really cared about us as people. And I thought that was
Moody Bible Institute's an institution in Chicago. I mean, all over the world, really.
Yeah.
There's, it's
international.
Internationally. Yeah. I'll tell you a quick story. My grandfather is from the island of Crete. My mom's dad, and he became a Christian in a church on the west side of Chicago. He wanted to find a wife who was Greek, but also a Protestant Christian, not Greek Orthodox at the time. That's what he wanted to do. And he heard about a family in Turkey that met this description. And so from Turkey, living in Egypt. And so he went to Egypt to find if this was a suitable situation. This he wanted a wife, and it turns out it's my grandma, but she was applying to Moody Bible Institute at the time, and so all of a sudden this guy from Chicago shows up to have a wife, and the parents are like, well, do you want to go with? Do you want to be married to him? You want to go with? He's like, well, seems okay. Yeah, let's go. So they came back to Chicago, got married, and she did courses at Moody, and
that's great. I didn't know
one of the
that.
reasons
That's
I'm
great.
here. So yeah.
That's so great. I talk to students all the time about dating and marriage, and they feel as though, well, you have to have this long courtship where you have this love relationship, and this is my soulmate and all this. So there's a lot of people in a lot of places over a long period of time that just went, you seem like you're a good guy. You seem like you're a good woman.
Probably throughout the history of the world was more common than...
That's right.
Yeah.
And pretty successful by and large. It really was. So that's cool. I never heard that. It's really good. Moody's such a neat place. It's just a lot of really, really good people who work hard and love the students.
And a radio program, too, that's well-known. I grew up listening to Moody Radio, and you spent some time there at Moody Radio as well? Yeah,
I had a time when I stepped out of what I will term secular radio. And during that time, I did some fill-in and other work at Moody Radio, and I still do a little of that from time to time. Occasionally, I'll help out on some of the weekend shows and things like that. I got my start in radio because of that internship at Moody Radio, and so I always feel this affinity with Moody Radio, and so many great people there doing great things, and so it's cool, even in a little way, to be a part of it.
So going back to graduating with the Master's in Divinity, and you think you're done. But then what?
Well, my wife, whom I love, said, you need to pray about what your ministry is going to be. Okay. Because God didn't send you to Moody just to lead some Bible study or something. What are you going to do? And when your wife says pray, you better pray.
Yeah.
And so I did. And it's supernatural. It's clearly the Lord, where I just started to feel this burden for our community. We were living in Oak Park at the time, in the near western suburbs, and I just started to feel like we need another church here. We need a church in this community. There's lots of churches in the community, but we need another church in this community. And I thought, because I'm me, I thought, man, God, you need to send somebody to this community to get a church started.
Sure, yeah.
And I'll help them out. Right. I'll do whatever I can, but you need to send somebody to this community. And it took me entirely too long to all of a sudden go, hey, dummy, he sent you to Moody. You have this degree. Your wife told you to pray about your ministry. Maybe you're the guy who needs to actually do this. And so he brought people from nowhere. We'd meet people on trains, walking through the neighborhood, and all of a sudden they said, we've been really thinking we need a new church in this community. And so we said, I think we need to start a new church. And so
your wife was on board with this?
100%.
Okay.
Yeah, 100%. And on board from the standpoint of believing that it was a good idea, that it's something that the Lord was leading in, but also just a true partner in all of it, in saying, hey, we're going to do this together. Both seminary trained, both love the Lord. We want to do this. And so we combined with this group of people, and we started a church in Oak Park that's called Village Church of Oak Park. And we were there for about 8 years, just seeing it grow from a few people who thought they wanted to get a church started to this beautiful, loving community that's still thriving. I've left. They have a new pastor. He's great. The church is still doing well.
That's rewarding.
And it's really, that's what we call ourselves church planters when we get churches started. Every church planter just wants to know years down the line that church is still there and still doing well and still healthy. And so it's really neat to be able to see that.
Yeah, and there was some connection to my dad early on somehow. I knew there was. I just didn't what was that story?
Marty, I don't tear up very often, but if I talk about your dad, it's one of those things that I knew him vaguely from different business organizations when I was in talk radio. And I didn't talk to him a lot because, he's kind of intimidated.
He was an intimidating guy. I was very intimidated.
That's Marty Ozinga, that's Marty. Even though he was the nicest, sweetest, gentlest man, no one to be intimidated
but he didn't talk much, and he just sort of had an intimidating way about him, too.
It was the look.
Yeah.
I went like, I don't know if I want to talk to that guy. I don't know. And so I'd known him just sort of vaguely. But I was at one, I would left secular radio and was getting the church started, and your dad walked up to me at this business group, and he said, Cisco. I didn't even know he knew who I was, really,
Interesting,
right?
Yeah.
Cisco.
You know, I could tell. I mean, the background is he just listens to nonstop AM radio.
That's what's funny. I had no idea.
Yeah.
I had no idea. And he walks up to me and he goes, "What? You're not on the radio anymore. What are you doing?" And I was sort of taken aback, and I said, "Well, I'm getting a church started." And he immediately pulled out a business card and gave it to me and said, "You email me. I've helped to get several other churches started. I'll pray for you. I'll give you financial support. I want to help you get started."
Okay.
And I sort of went, okay, all right. I guess, God, I need to get a church started now. And he kept in touch throughout the years. We would talk on the phone. He's just so encouraging. He would regularly pray for us. He sent financial support that literally is the reason the church exists. I mean, it was him just faithfully saying, I want to be a part of what God's doing here. He came to a church service in Oak Park when we installed our first set of elders. He came to that celebration. And anytime I would talk with him, I would just say, you just have no idea. You were faithful in that little, whatever the little tug that day that made him go, hey, let me help you out here. You were faithful, and God has used it to get this beautiful community going here. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And so when I go back and visit that church in Oak Park, even though I'm no longer there, when I go back, one of the many things that I think about is, man, it was Marty III who was faithful and was a big reason why this church got started.
Yeah, I'll just tell you a few things. One, I already said this before, but AM radio, I mean, he's just like a big fan.
He knew I was no longer on.
Yeah, but still, I mean, and also growing up, we grew up in a Dutch CRC type of traditional church throughout many generations, and the church was right behind our house, and we'd walk on Sunday, go twice on Sundays, and at some point, my dad wanted to go figure out a different approach to church, and he, along with some two students out of seminary, started a church from scratch in a gym. And we were a part of that. I was probably, 12, 13 years old. And so every Sunday, we're setting up chairs and doing this. Is the way I grew up. He definitely had a heart for, entrepreneurs, which is really ultimately, what it takes to start anything from scratch. But given his own experience with church planning.
So you know what it's like then.
Yeah, 100%.
Got to set up, tear down, get it ready.
Yeah, I have PTSD, but...
that's what's in the church in Oak Park. We met in rented space the whole time I was there, and it was set up, tear down. It was all that stuff. Yeah. You got to roll out the cables for all the sound equipment and everything. You got to put it all away at the end of the day. And then after I left, their new pastor led them into a building, so they now have their own building. And I'm a tad bit jealous. I really am. No more setup and tear down.
Right.
You have no idea what it was like to do this. So it's cool. There's something about those early days where everybody's excited, everyone's on mission together, and so even all of the setup and tear down, it's really worth it.
Yeah, and you have that kinship or that friendship, forever with those people who were with each other.
That's right. Yeah.
Beyond sort of like next chapters then, and even current state, just tell us a little bit more about your path to get to where you're.
There's a couple of things that went on really almost simultaneously. We started to realize that we had family members in Aurora. We were in Oak Park, and my family was all in Aurora. And we were never seeing them. I mean, they may as well have lived in California or something.
Yeah,
we were seeing them, maybe twice a year. And so my wife at first felt this burden. Hey, we got to get closer to your family. She said, I think we should move to Aurora. I'm praying about moving to Aurora. And I literally said, because I'm, rebellious, I said, well, you can pray about that, but I'm not going to.
Wow.
I'm not moving back home.
Yeah.
I'm away from home. I'm
Interesting how your wife wants to go to her in-laws,
and she's willing to pray, and I tell her I'm not going to pray about it. I'm a great spiritual leader in my house, Marty. I really am. You pray. I'm not going to. But eventually I broke down and I started praying about it. And we both just really had this sense that, yes, we love Oak Park, we love this church, we love our neighbors, we love everything about the community, but we need to go. And so we did. We left the church that we loved and the community we loved, and we moved back to Aurora. And that, from a family sense, has been great. We see our family all the time. We're so connected to them. People pop over and have dinner and everything. I mean, it's everything that we wanted it to be. But I also very quickly, I didn't know if I was going to be a pastor ever again once I left that church. And within 10 days of moving to Aurora, I had been hired at Village Bible Church. So I was an unemployed pastor for 10 days.
Yeah.
10 days.
You just got a target on your back?
I guess I walk in and I look like an unemployed pastor or something. I don't know. I walk into one of their campuses and chatted with the pastor briefly. He connected me to their senior pastor and their executive pastor. The senior pastor's Tim Badal, the executive pastor's Keith Duff. And he said, we have someone who needs an emergency sabbatical. Would you mind preaching for the next few months at one of our campuses? Okay, I guess so. And then in that time, those 3 months, we started realizing, hey, I like you guys. I like this church. You guys like me. Hey, maybe we can work something out here. And so I got employed there. And right at that time, a church in Naperville that was really struggling contacted us and said, we're down to 25 people, all senior citizens. We can't take care of the building anymore. Physically, we can't take care of the building. Will you guys take us over and do basically like an adoption?
Yeah.
And Tim Badal and Keith Duff at Village Bible Church said, wouldn't you know, the Lord just dropped a church planter in our lap.
Oh, wow.
Maybe this is why. And Anna and I said, we're doing this all over again. And so we did. And so we started a campus of Village Bible Church in Naperville.
Okay.
And I was the campus pastor, and we planted it together, had a great team of people. And we got that going for about 3 years when what Anna realized at first, there's a running theme here, Marty, that my wife figures these things out before me.
Yeah, well, that's good to have.
Is that how it goes?
Yeah, well, maybe sometimes.
A little hard-headed.
I say my boys are a little slower than my girls, but
a little hard-headed. So she said, you're between the radio job at WBBM and this pastor job, you're going 7 days a week. You're doing a lot of things that are outside of your gifting. You're a teacher, you're a communicator, but there's just a lot of the logistical administration stuff. And you can't go 7 days. You can't keep doing all these things that are draining you. We got to come up with something different. And Moody Bible Institute is hiring someone to teach in pastoral studies. Maybe you should pray about applying. And so I did. I prayed about applying and went through a whole process and got the job. And I've been there for, it was 2023.
Okay.
I was hired on the faculty to teach pastoral studies. And so I teach at Moody, and I still attend Village Bible Church and serve as a sort of a lay leader, leading some Bible studies and things.
Okay.
But my primary ministry role now is teaching future pastors at Moody Bible Institute.
Oh. And how are you finding that?
To have started in radio because of an internship at Moody Radio, and then to have met my wife at Moody Seminary, and now to be back teaching at Moody Bible Institute is just this weird full circle thing.
Yeah.
It's just very, very weird for me to be there in that capacity. But to be in the classroom with these young people who are excited about life, excited about God, can't wait to serve Him, love that they're being trained. I keep telling people who are down on this generation, this generation, you don't know. Like, come to Moody Bible Institute. Spend a couple hours with me. We're going to be
that's
just
encouraging
fine.
To hear.
Yeah, we're going to be just fine.
Yeah, that's great.
So I love it. I get to be their pastor in some ways when they're struggling. They're in my office, talking about the issues, and they really encourage me. And I just never thought I would be doing this, and it's great, great fun.
So how does that fit? You said your program is 5 to 10, and then what? You hoof it over to Moody campus, or like what is that? What's going on?
Yeah, I get done with the radio at 10. I'm usually out of there about 10:30 or so.
Okay.
A few things I have to do after the show. And so about 10:30 or so, I'm done at the radio, and I drive over to Moody, which is about 7 minutes away from the radio station. Moody's on the near north side. And then I start teaching, and I teach all afternoon, and I have meetings with students, and I do all of that sort of stuff. And then I get home about 7, you know, it's a long day.
Yeah,
It
that is a long day.
Not a lot of Netflix for me,
No,
Marty.
no.
It's not a lot of that stuff. And then the next morning I wake up and I do it all again. So Monday through Thursday are very busy.
Okay.
But my weekends, I'm hanging out with my family.
Oh, that's good.
I'm going to cello recitals and taekwondo and baseball and volleyball and hanging out, playing games, going away for the weekend. And there's been just such great opportunity for ministry and also an opportunity to really just be with my family.
Yeah, and your kids are what age?
So I have a 15-year-old, a 13-year-old, and a 12-year-old. And I am seeing what parents always told me, that it just goes by so fast.
Yeah.
And I didn't believe them. I thought, 18, 19 years or something, that's a long time.
Yeah.
And it is flying by. And so I praise God that I really love them and love being around them.
Yeah, that's good.
And they still seem like they like being around me.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to
good
take
too.
advantage of that.
Yeah.
I know it doesn't always work out that way.
No, it does not.
So I'm trying to take advantage of that. I really am.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. I read that you went to Peru with a group. What was that all about?
This was a radio station trip
Okay.
through WBBM where they connected with a travel agency called Windy City Travel to just put on this sort of listener trip. Hey, it's kind of an excursion, a bucket list sort of excursion. And the story behind that is the radio station had approached me about doing this trip. Originally, it was going to be France. Hey, would you and your wife like to go to France with some listeners?
Okay. Sounds okay.
Yeah, twist my arm, right? Okay, sure. And Anna and I had Machu Picchu in Peru as probably our number one bucket list. Can't wait to get there someday kind of a thing. Never thought we'd actually be there, but that was on the list. And so the radio station then sent me an email a few weeks later. Hey, we've changed our mind. Instead of France, we want you to go to Machu Picchu.
Well, there you go.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
And so I just forwarded the email to Anna right away, and I said, you're not going to believe this, but this is the trip instead of France. And so we went, and there's a bunch of listeners there, and people wondered, well, what is that really like, to be away? They're just wonderful. I mean, it was this great, it was almost like a new radio family of being able to travel with them and experience these great meals and see these sights. And Machu Picchu's everything that they say it is.
Yeah.
It was not disappointing in any way. And so just being able to experience that, something we've wanted to do forever, but to experience it with these radio friends was just really,
And when you
really
say
cool.
radio friends, like, who are radio friends?
There is.
I mean, I wasn't invited.
No, I know. Well, we'll bring you next time. I don't know where we're going to go, but we'll bring you along next time. There is something about radio, even though we've talked about radio and some of its challenges and opportunities. There's something about radio, unlike any other medium, where it is deeply personal.
Yeah.
You talked about being in the car
Well, that's
with
what
your
my dad just
right?
bolted for you.
Yes. There's something about it where
He thought you were his friend.
That's how it works. Oh, I remember when you had this happen in your life or that happen in your life. You're talking to people on the radio. You're in their cars. You're in their bedrooms. You're in their showers. You're in their kitchens. I mean, it's like you're their friend.
Yeah.
And so it really does feel that way when you're hanging out with people who listen to you on the radio. There's just this connection. And it's not like that in TV. It's not like that in the movies or anything else. There's something deeply personal about that connection with radio. And so I'm on this trip with Peru. In Peru, my wife's the only one that I know other than, it's her and that's it. And to meet these people and to share stories and to feel this connection, it was like we were radio friends.
And have you
right
done
there.
that before, or is this the first time?
It's the first time I've taken a trip like this. I've done different remote broadcasts at restaurants in the auto show, and WBBM does broadcasts from the Air and Water Show every year along the lakefront. And there you get to meet people. This is the first time that it was a week long. We are together. We are hanging out. We're traveling together. And it was just wonderful to feel.
Cool.
To feel a connection with complete strangers right off the bat?
Yeah, that's fascinating.
It's just not ordinary. It's good though.
Yeah. You have that connection. Is that job security? I mean, how do you? I mean, you talk to some people like actors and other people like it. You're always sort of job insecure. And
You feel that way. On the one hand, you should. You never want to feel like you're untouchable.
Yeah, like you have tenure.
Right?
Like you.
Yes.
Yeah, that's not attractive.
Yeah, you don't want to feel that way. I feel secure because I've been doing this a lot of years, and I have that connection with the audience, and so in that sense, I feel secure. On the other hand, I'm not under the illusion, and I hope my boss isn't watching this, I'm not under the illusion that there's no one else who can do this job, right? I mean, there are other people who can do it.
It seems like it gets dangerous when people are.
Yeah.
Like all of a sudden you hear.
I want my boss to think that, though, Marty. I want my boss to go, if we lose Cisco, the whole ship sinks.
Yeah.
That's what I want.
I mean, there's some element of that that's, I mean, just that rapport that you've built with your audience, that it's sticky and that it means something.
And you want that. You want the audience to say, I'm comfortable with that person. And so that's one of the reasons why I listen. Yes, I want the information, but I want it from that person. There really is that kind of connection. So I hope, I mean, who knows? Radio's evolving, and I don't know what the Lord will do, but I hope I'm still doing this 20 years from now. We'll see.
Yeah.
But I've been fired from radio jobs before, and it's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
But so you just know it's always a little tenuous. But
interesting.
But I hope I'm still doing it for a long time.
As you think about sort of like you're imparting these things to these young pastors, you're living in the world of WBBM. How do you think about just sort of the impact, like in your life, the legacy you leave with, what's in being imparted in other people on a day-to-day basis? How are you thinking about that? Just in general, and you use the word secular versus, ministry. People wrestle with, should I be full-time ministry or as a Christian or, in the secular world, or, how do you think through, is one more important than the other, or,
No, I mean, let me just say right away, no, and I know a lot of people would disagree with me, but one thing that we have to tell people as pastors, as professors, as leaders, one of the things that we have to tell people is their work matters. God, you see it all the way the very beginning of the Bible in the book of Genesis. God creates two people, and he tells them to take care of the earth, to steward the earth.
It wasn't after the fall.
That's right. Oh, you're exactly right. After the fall, work becomes a real pain, and we don't like it.
Right.
And it's the ground produces thorns, and it becomes this challenge. But you're right on that work is there from the beginning. You get to the end of the Bible, we're going to be working in heaven. Sorry, folks. Work doesn't go away. We were made to work. And so no matter what you're doing, if you're the one driving the concrete truck, you're doing that to honor God. You're doing that to his glory, no matter what you're doing. And so if you are pastoring, if you're a professor training pastors, that's great. You're building into people in that way. But I just always stress, whenever I speak at men's conferences or that sort of thing, I just always stress, hey, for women too, but especially for guys who have work often as more of an identity, hey, if you are doing this to honor God, you are doing something good. And this is really something that you should continue. Don't feel like because you're not in ministry that, it's not sacred work. It's not important work. It's really, really not the case.
For those who might not, that might be new to, like that idea or that notion, how would you sort of distill that down for somebody to say, well, how does driving a concrete truck honor God? What does that mean?
Yeah, God created this world. He created it orderly. He created it good. And he created each of us with gifts, abilities, and responsibilities in maintaining that. And so whether you are an artist or a plumber or you drive a concrete truck, no matter what it is that you do, if you are doing it well, if you are doing it with integrity, if you're not lazy, if you're not cutting corners, if you're a person of character, if you have an attitude that, hey, this is something that is good, then you are honoring God as you are a part of his world system. And that's where people get kind of off track, where they start thinking, I'm not a pastor. I'm not really. This is just making money to pay the bills.
Yes, make ends meet or whatever.
No. When I am in the backyard, then I hate doing yard work. I just hate it. Some people love it.
Yeah?
I hate it.
Okay.
When I'm in the backyard and I'm doing this yard work that I have to do, I'm sitting there telling myself, I am Adam in the garden. I am.
Does it work?
For a few minutes. I'll be honest, not for the 3 or 4 hours that I have to be out there. For a few minutes, though, I go, that's right. I'm Adam. I'm in the garden pulling weeds. This is what I'm supposed to do. And it's important that people understand that so that work doesn't seem just mundane or just a way to pay the rent.
Yeah.
No, we honor God as we are working faithfully, no matter what it is that you do. And when you're retired, even your work around the house, even your work in your family, all of that honors God.
Yeah.
And so we should embrace it and be content in it and not see it as somehow less than what a pastor or a missionary or someone
How
like
do you
that
see
does.
that, like at Moody, with respect to people thinking about full-time vocational ministry, and is Moody thinking about like people in the marketplace, for instance? Is that something that's encouraged or discouraged? I mean, how is Moody looking at that
Our
now?
president, who's Mark Jobe, our president says all the time, so much so that I think anyone at Moody can repeat this because it's in our minds. He says, we want you to come and study at Moody regardless of where you're going to get your paycheck. And the reason is because no matter where you get your paycheck, you're going to be honoring the Lord. And no matter where you get your paycheck, knowing more about God through the scriptures and how to explain those to people, that's good for you, no matter whether you're a pastor or not.
Yeah.
It is good for anyone to know more about the Lord. And so that's why he says, hey, if you already have a bachelor's degree or something, come and just take a few classes. Learn more about the Bible. Learn more about how to study the Bible better. Learn more about how to teach people the Bible. No matter what it is that you're doing. For me, I was this radio guy who went to Moody Seminary just to learn the Bible. And now for a lot of years, I've been what's called a bivocational pastor, where I've had this job in radio and I've also had this job in ministry. And I never would have had that if I had thought the only reason to go and study the Bible is if you're going to be a pastor.
Right.
Because at first I never would have thought that I was going to be a pastor. You realize by the end of this, Marty, I'm going to have you as a student at Moody.
Yeah, well,
you know that's where this is going, right?
We'll see.
I'm recruiting here.
Can I just sign up for your class?
You can, although I'd like you to get someone good, too. I'd like you to
well, I'm sure you're very good. I guess another question I have along these same lines is being bivocational and you sort of being out there in the marketplace and people knowing, has there been any downside in the marketplace for you that you've picked up on? Or, I don't know, I mean, some people are afraid to sort of be out there with their faith in the marketplace, particularly in more maybe environments that are not receptive to that kind of thing.
Yeah, I've had people wonder, especially in the media.
Yeah.
They say, "Oh, how can you be a Christian in the media?
Yeah, right.
How can you be a pastor who's also in the media?" And I'll be honest, I don't know, maybe there's some people who have a difficult time with it. I've never had even a single interaction with someone in any of my radio jobs where they have questioned my faith or been upset at me about my faith or where it's caused problems. I'll take WBBM as the example. We have this diverse newsroom, people from all kinds of backgrounds, and we all get together really well because we have one goal. That is putting a great product on the air. That's our one goal.
Yeah.
I'm not there to force you to be a Christian. You're not there to force me to be secular or another faith or whatever it is that you believe. We're not there to impose any of that. If you want to have a conversation, sure, I'll talk about it, but I'm not there to impose this on anyone. That's not what God wants. And so people assume that it's antagonistic or something, that there's people coming at me all the time.
I think it's good for people to hear because I think, I've heard it said before, like there's a lot of us are undercover Christians. There's a fear, that may be irrational, that may be rational. I don't really know, but there's, some kind of fear about even mentioning that you're a Christian or any kind of faith. Maybe Muslims or other people feel that way too. I don't know.
We've given into, there's this writer, Nancy Piercy, who's written, she's not the only one, but she's written about this sort of secular sacred divide that's really taken hold in our culture, where we say, this is not religious, that's that aspect of my life, and the religious shouldn't at all get into that.
Yeah.
And then here is the sacred, this is my church life, this is where my faith life is. And because of people who don't want to be religious, who keep saying, no, this isn't, they've sort of created that divide. And Christians have played into that. And instead what we need to say is, my job is not to force you into my faith. Of course not. And yet I don't need to act as though my faith is not real and that it's not important.
Or it's not a big part of my life.
It's a huge part of my life. And by the way, I think it's true or else I wouldn't believe it, just like other people believe that their faiths are true. So we really need to bridge that, and we need to say, regardless of what your faith background is, you need to live that out in every area of your life, and don't be afraid. And if someone's being mean to you or whatever because of it, then you need to have a conversation. Hey, why? I'm not forcing you to do this. Why are you trying to force me to do it your way?
Yeah, and yet the Bible does say that could happen.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But we are, as Christians, there's a fear of the negative impact. Well, what if?
Right.
What if people don't like me? What if I get fired?
Yeah.
What if I? And that's where you say, well, okay, that might happen. And if so what?
Yeah.
I mean, if you're a Christian, you think that God is not there, that he's not at work, that he doesn't have something else for you to do. And we are hesitant.
Yeah. I because we come from a tradition and we're in a family business that speaks to this issue of honor and glorifying God with the business. We've been pretty out front about it, and I will tell people who ask me this very same question, I would say 99 to 1, maybe the one, or maybe 99 and a half. I get more encouragement and affirmation about just being open and transparent. Again, I'm not trying to convert people in a weird sort of
when someone wants to work with you, you don't go, well, where do you go to church?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
exactly.
That's not the role.
Right. One of the curious things to me, and I don't know if it's an irony or what, but some of the HR movement in the last number of years is, you may have heard this phrase, but like bring your whole self to work.
Yeah.
It's like, okay.
Yeah. Don't be afraid of that.
Yeah.
Right. Be who you are.
Right.
And often that is not about faith. It's about any other belief or
right.
where I come from or whatever. And it needs to also be about faith.
Yeah.
This is who I am. Again, as we've said multiple times, I'm not going to force you to do this. I'm not going to make you pray with me.
Yeah.
I'm not going to make you read the Bible with me or whatever. But I should be able to live out my faith just like you should be able to live out your faith or no faith.
No faith, yeah.
And feel comfortable in this environment.
Yeah.
Christians and people of any faith group, they need to feel open to do that. And I'm glad that that's something that's being talked about more now.
Can I ask you, because you've been in and around Chicagoland for so long, I mean, you spoke about your optimism about young people at Moody and just in general, like the city of Chicago and, maybe it's perceptions of it or just your take, given like your insight, the chair that you sit in on, just Chicago in general. Like, what's your take about Chicago?
I understand the challenges that Chicago faces, and any big city. There are financial challenges. Yeah. There are relational challenges. There's violence that has so many things wrapped up in it. It's not one cause. There's just so much going on, and those are real. Those are real challenges. But it's been almost 10 years ago now, but I think it's still relevant. I did the Chicago Marathon. Okay, now you notice I say I did the marathon. I didn't say I ran the marathon. It was ugly, but I finished.
Well, you finished.
I finished the marathon. I can say that.
That's most people's goal.
Oh, it took me a long time, but I could have driven to and from Indianapolis in the time it took me.
Well, that's better. My dad, when my brother was in it, he ran about 50 yards with him, and he said, "I ran in the Chicago Marathon."
That's about how far I ran too. It's a lot of walking that day. But the great thing about the marathon is it takes you through so many neighborhoods in the city, and I guess I knew that, but it just didn't hit me until I did it. And you go through all of these diverse neighborhoods.
It's an incredible day.
Oh, yeah, it's just beautiful.
Yeah.
And there's people cheering you on, and you see in a way that you otherwise might not, just the great, beautiful, wondrous diversity of Chicago. There's so many great places in this city. Yeah. And so, there's people who are concerned. There are people who are just haters. And I say, man, Chicago is just a great place. I have zero desire to live anywhere else, but I realize I'm in the suburbs, but I'm in the city every day. This is where I want to be. And so I'm not a politician or anything, but I feel positive about the city's future, and I really am glad. I think there's a lot going on.
I'm glad to hear you say that. I have lived in the city for a long time now, and as you say, it has its challenges. It can be discouraging.
Sure.
I mean, I've been to many parts of the world, and I really feel like it's the greatest city in the world. It just has so much going for it.
Is that because we're from here?
I don't know.
I feel the
kind
same
of a
way.
chip on my shoulder. I've been saying it for a long time. I really feel strongly about Chicago.
It's beautiful.
It is.
It has a unique beauty that you go to some other cities, and there's some nice cities, and there's cities with natural beauty.
Yeah.
But to just be in the city of Chicago, it's just a beautiful
great
city.
place.
It really is.
Yeah.
The lakefront and the architecture, and there's just so much going on. I'm never bored in Chicago.
No.
There's always something to do.
Any last thoughts you feel like people would enjoy hearing, or that you would like to leave with us?
Well, the problem, Marty, is I'm a journalist, so I'm used to asking questions. So I have about 30 things I'd love to ask you about. How do you, as a business leader who's involved in projects all around the city and suburbs and really the Midwest, how are you feeling about the way things are going in the future? Are you as optimistic about it as I am?
Well, I think I've done a lot of sort of heritage, looking back at where we came from as a family, and they're beautiful places, whether it's in the Netherlands or Greece or Turkey or wherever. And you look around, and it is a thriving metropolis. Now we are sort of very tight at the hip because we ship a perishable product. Concrete, you have to make it within 15 or 20 minutes of where it is, and so we are very much sort of codependent with how well the region's economy is going, and it's always been sort of a little bit of a roller coaster. I think right at the moment in the last few years, there's been a lot of migratory sort of, a lot of people moving to Florida, and, some of it's tax reasons, some of it's just the demographics, the boomers and snowbirds and everything else. But it's been challenged. I mean, we're trying to sort out, like, where's the growth? Where's the next bit of growth? I love history, and you look at how Chicago grew and where it grew from out of really nothing. So dynamic, such a swagger, such a, the city that works kind of attitude. And that's not to say it hasn't been without its challenges and its problems since the beginning. But, there is a big question mark right now, not just for the city, but the whole region. Where is the next sort of, have we sort of peaked out and, just sort of, plateaued and maybe stagnating and going down a bit? It feels like we've been sitting in that place for a while.
Yeah. And COVID. Did COVID kind of help?
Well, COVID definitely hurt the city in a bad way.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody sort of, not everybody, a lot of people left the city in particular, and I understand the reasons why, but I think the city's rebounded since COVID, I would say, just this is a dynamic place to sort of be. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's a curious question that I'm wrestling with right now, is just sort of a growth agenda, for the region. We'll see.
And that's every businessman or woman, right? You're always thinking, hey, everything's been great, but what's next?
Yeah.
What's coming down the pike, and what can we plan for?
Yeah, and our business has kind of gotten to the point where we've saturated the entire region. Like, we don't have a lot of room to, grow into a new county of the region or whatever. And so where does that leave us? We did move down to South Florida. We're in Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach counties. And that was an opportunity for us to grow into a new region. But this is still home, and we don't want to just say, we're sort of twiddling our thumbs here. We like hiring people. We want to, continue to reinvest here, but we're at the mercy of, things beyond just us. And so anyway, that's sort of
you need projects.
Yeah. And there's not a lot of tower cranes, in Chicago right now. There's and the region in general is, where does it come from? There's just a number of things that have stalled out, and so we're trying to just keep do our part to figure out how to have these conversations and hear from other people on how we can get there. What's your thoughts on
I mean, there's the one thing that I'd like, and someone's got to tell me how to figure this out. I asked your dad about this years ago. I said to him, Marty, at O'Hare and Midway, you can build these runways that never get potholes. Why can't I have the Eisenhower or the Dan Ryan with no potholes?
Yeah.
And his answer was really, really clear. Very, your dad is very sort of straight-faced, and he goes, well, you could, but that'd cost a lot of money.
Yeah.
And I went, well, that's probably why we don't have that.
Yeah.
So if you could talk to someone somewhere to get me an expressway that never has any potholes because, I don't know, the concrete's 50 feet deep or whatever it is, I would be a very happy man.
Yeah, I do think there is, you get what you pay for, and there's something long-term about things. Chicago construction is part of construction traffic, and that's what you could cover how often are you covering?
Yeah, well, that's why we have traffic and weather on the 8th. Our guy,
exactly.
in the morning, our guy is Bo Duran. He does such a great job, but I don't want to put Bo out of work. And yet, I would kind of like to just go, man, I just skate down the Eisenhower, the Dan Ryan, wherever.
I think more concrete would help.
Yeah, I'll bet you do. See, this is what I was trying to lead you into here.
I didn't want to hurt my asphalt friends' feelings, but I do think more concrete would definitely
more concrete, deeper. That's what we need.
Yeah, more concrete for sure. Well, thanks for being here. It's great to have you out here, and it's great to hear your story. It's great to have a friendship that, and we want to continue that and continue to hear your voice on Chicago radio until the Lord allows for it. Who knows? You're a staple here, and that voice of trust. You've created that with your audience, and we appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks, Marty. Thanks to you and your family and your business and all the great people who work for you. Just a real pillar in our community. So thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
Thanks.
Make sure to subscribe to Set in Stone on your preferred podcast app, as well as on YouTube for full video of every conversation. Keep up on our social media and company updates over at ozinga.com.